In December 2019, in the city of Wuhan in the Hubei province of China, a small cluster of people show themselves at the hospital, presenting with pneumonia-like symptoms. 3 months later, total cases of this virus are over 1 million, and the death toll stands at over 60,000. The current numbers? 219 million cases and over 4.5 million deaths. Now, just over 18 months later, while the rest of the world is still gripped in the clutches of COVID-19, in the epicenter of the virus, and China as a whole, life has largely returned to normal, having beaten the odds to come out victorious against the virus. 2 recent studies have assessed the way in which China went about handling the pandemic, and by combining points from both, we can lay out a, not by any means exhaustive, but comprehensive list of the successful decisions which may describe a way out of the pandemic for other nations. So how exactly has the nation with the largest population in the world nearly eradicated COVID? One advantage pointed out in the articles by both Al-Takali and Berkey is China's pre-existing epidemic response capabilities. From 2002 to 2003, the SARS virus became widespread across China. With the experience from this pandemic, anomalous infection patterns were able to be identified much faster. A timeline put together by Wu and McGugan in 2020 states that one day after the first COVID case was reported to the World Health Organization, the wet markets where it originated were shut down, and within the week, a novel virus was identified. 3 days later, the genomic sequencing was released to the world. This is much faster than the 2 months that it took for SARS to be sequenced. Such fast actions and advancements in epidemic responses made a great change in how far the virus was able to spread before identification. The World Health Organization was notified of the SARS outbreak after 300 cases and 5 deaths, whereas only 27 cases of COVID-19 were found before the World Health Organization was notified this time around. Much like the rest of the world, China used the lockdown and social distancing strategies to limit the spread of the virus. However, the one-party rule of China means that lockdowns need not be politicized and used as tools to gain a leg up against political opponents. The PRC was able to enact much harsher lockdowns than seen elsewhere. No shops were able to sell anything other than food and medicine. Intra and international travel was quickly halted to contain the disease. As opposed to the reactive efforts of the West, large-scale proactive police action was taken to ensure quarantine was obeyed, ranging from door knocks to pointing out people flaunting the rules with drones equipped with loudspeakers. In the city of Wuhan alone, 11 million people were in strict lockdown, and across the Hubei province, around 60 million. While the human and economic costs of such lockdowns was debated and assessed, forecasts by Yuan and Zhong show that by the end of the pandemic, the temporary cost of the lockdown outweigh the would-be loss of life and economic distress if cases had continued to rise, calculated to be approximately 1.4 million cases and 56,000 deaths. Even more than its communist rule, China is known for its colossal production and manufacturing capabilities across all industries. Though at first not obvious, these advantages greatly assisted China in reducing the toll of the pandemic within their borders. At the beginning of the pandemic, many countries struggled with mask and medical equipment shortages due to never needing them in such quantities before. China, however, had easy access to masks and PPE, as the majority of it is produced there. Producing, buying, selling vaccines is also an ongoing issue, with many countries not able to get enough and relying on donations and those bought from other countries. China handled this issue by not only producing their own vaccines, Sinopharm and Sinovac, but using the pre-existing inactivated virus vaccine formulations, as opposed to the new mRNA and DNA vaccines which need new methods of production and storage. By using the existing infrastructure, as of August 2021, 2 billion doses have been administered. Unlike countries such as Australia, they were also quick to build more infrastructure where they saw fit. The Laishanshang and Huashenshang hospitals were erected in just 10 days, increasing capacity by 2,500 beds, and from February 5th, temporary Fengcang hospitals were set up in stadiums and centres as needed, reducing pressure on the hospital system. Many of the tactics I've mentioned have been used elsewhere. However, only China seems to have defeated COVID-19 to such a high degree. By detailing how China adapted and implemented each strategy, we may find what is at the core strength of their response to the pandemic. By sorting them out into efforts that were uniquely Chinese versus common approaches by governments, we'll be able to identify where the success of their response lies. For brevity, I will draw comparisons with Australia. China was in the unique position that it had a recent and acute history with SARS, meaning the general population was more in tune with the possibility of another epidemic. Lockdowns. Australia is no stranger to lockdowns, however, the diligence at which they enforced is far greater on China's end. We see a much greater breaching of public health orders here in Australia. developing health and medical infrastructure. As seen in Darwin, the temporary and purpose-built quarantine locations work well, yet the major cities continue to use inadequate infrastructure to contain the pandemic. With new hospitals appearing often in China, the health system is much better protected, as are the citizens. In conclusion, the success of China's pandemic response lies in the effective use of their experience, economic self-reliance, and political unity, prioritizing the containment of the disease above all else. This has allowed China to restore safety and security to its citizens.